Eastern European challenge Orban and Fico, question EU sanctions policy. A political signal from Eastern Europe is currently causing a stir in Brussels and Washington. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban and his Slovak counterpart Robert Fico have publicly reaffirmed their cooperation while voicing strong criticism of the European Union's energy and sanctions policy. Both heads of government made it clear their countries are not willing to risk economic stability and social security for political experiments. Criticism of the EU Commission. In a joint statement, Orban and Fico stressed that they would not sacrifice their citizens for ideological adventures. Orban accused EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen of ignoring people's concerns and leading Europe into an economic crisis with her policies. Fico warned that an abrupt halt to Russian oil imports without functioning alternatives would amount to economic suicide for Slovakia. Fico's economy minister Denisa Sakova was especially outspoken. She pointed out that more than 70% of Slovakia's chemical and steel industries depend on Russian oil from the Druzhba pipeline. An immediate supply stop would trigger factory closures, mass unemployment, and social unrest. Already, protests against rising electricity and heating costs are taking place in Bratislava and Košice. Orban's confrontational course. Viktor Orban also positioned himself unequivocally. In Budapest, he declared that the EU had lost contact with reality. Sanctions against Russia, he argued, weaken not Moscow but primarily European economies. Hungary still covers more than 60% of its energy needs with Russian imports. An abrupt renunciation would affect millions of households. Orban announced that from now on he would block every EU sanctions package that directly endangered Hungarian interests. He also openly contradicted former U.S. President Donald Trump, who had called for punitive tariffs against countries that continue to import Russian oil. According to Orban, tariffs are not a weapon against Russia, but a threat to European industry. Protests in several countries. The positions of Orban and Fico resonate with parts of their populations and beyond. In Hungary, Orban enjoys support from more than 65% of respondents in polls for his EU-critical stance. Demonstrators carry signs reading, "Orban protects our families." In Slovakia, too, people are taking to the streets. Slogans such as "heating instead of sanctions" or "we are not Brussels guinea pigs" can be seen there. Similar protests are now taking place in Germany as well. In Leipzig, Berlin, and Dresden, thousands are gathering to demonstrate against high energy prices and sanctions policy. Notable is the composition of the protests. Trade unionists, entrepreneurs, supporters of various parties, and non-political citizens standing side by side. Economic concerns in Germany. The debate is not limited to Eastern Europe. In Germany, the Federation of German Industries is warning of the loss of up to 300,000 jobs if the energy supply is abruptly cut off from Russian resources. The chemical industry in the Rhineland, steel mills in North Rhine-Westphalia, and the automotive industry in Bavaria would be particularly affected. At the same time, millions of households are feeling the rising costs. Electricity prices have risen by 45% since 2022, and heating costs have doubled in some places. According to polls, barely a third of Germans still trust the EU's energy policy. A leaked internal paper from the German Ministry of Economic Affairs further fueled the discussion. According to it, energy prices could rise by another 25% by 2026, even if all sanctions work as planned. This forecast is feeding doubts about the current course. Trump in the transatlantic dimension. Tensions are heightened by the stance of the United States. Donald Trump, at a G7 summit in Washington, called for much tougher measures against Russia, including punitive tariffs for countries that continue to buy Russian oil. This demand is aimed directly at Hungary and Slovakia. While Ursula von der Leyen and parts of the German government welcome this stance, Trump's remarks met resistance in Eastern Europe. Orban described the idea as self-destructive, Fico as unacceptable. U.S. diplomats report tense discussions in which Slovak Economy Minister Sakova stressed that her country needed functioning alternatives before it could give up Russian energy. Critics suspect that Trump's demands also conceal economic self-interest. Expensive oil imports from Russia could boost sales of U.S. liquefied natural gas. In Europe, suspicion is growing that transatlantic unity is strained not only by geopolitical, but also by economic interests. A fragile European unity. The developments show how fragile the consensus within the EU has become. In Brussels, the announcements by Orban and Fico triggered hectic crisis meetings. Diplomats report that attempts were made to placate both countries with financial commitments. Bratislava, however, refused. "We will not be bought," the Slovak government said. The planned 19th EU sanctions package is thus in question. Without the approval of all member states, it remains blocked. Observers speak of a stress test reminiscent of Brexit. For the first time in a long while, two EU heads of government are openly demanding a departure from the established line and signal their willingness, if necessary, to influence the entire union's course with their veto. Growing social divide. Parallel to the political debate, social pressure is mounting in many member states. In several countries, governments are facing demonstrations not only driven by radical groups, but supported by broad sections of the population. Teachers, nurses, craftsmen, and engineers alike are participating. Many citizens feel no longer represented by Brussels or their national governments. In talk shows and on social media, the question is raised whether solidarity with Ukraine is more important than safeguarding one's own standard of living. An open future. The events show that the EU stands at a crossroads. While the Commission insists on European solidarity, Hungary and Slovakia openly question this logic. At the same time, Germany and France face growing domestic political pressure. The coming months are likely to be decisive. Should resistance in Eastern Europe persist and possibly find imitators, this could permanently weaken the EU's sanctions course. It is equally conceivable that protest movements in several countries could gain political influence. Regardless of the outcome, it is already clear today. Energy and sanctions policy has sparked a debate that goes far beyond technical questions. It is about the very foundation of European politics, the balance between solidarity, economic stability, and democratic legitimacy.